Do you have any questions?
Hello, my name is Zlata Novotná. I come from Sejtek Masaryk University from South Moravia, Czech Republic. I would have a question because the Unit 5 is in charge of widening participation, spreading excellence, and these are these two nice tools of twinning and teaming projects. Would you please comment on how the synergies are transferred or translated into these concrete tools, let's say, or programs that are, I guess, quite successful up to now? Thank you.
Do I answer directly or yeah? I have it. Do I answer directly? Yeah? Okay, so so thanks for the question. First of all, congratulations, because Sejtek is one of those organizations very active, and also in the Seal of Excellence you have launched as well as support for alternative funding, so you are concretely implementing synergies. You have found an SMEs with the Seal of Excellence. Now, there was a slide in my presentation, but I went through quite quickly for widening. It's especially under teaming. Teaming has a requirement to, in the phase 1, to have a link with the smart specialization strategy. You know, for those who, I don't know if you know, but widening is a special part in Horizon 2020 that has particular characteristics. Is not funding research. The three main actions, teaming, twinning, and ERA-chairs, are coordination and support actions. So we don't fund research as such, but the other activities that help. And it's especially the main focus is institution building, institution networking, and bringing excellence to institutions. So it has this type of, just to give the background, this type of dimension. The other characteristic is coordinators need to come from the widening countries, and widening countries are the EU13 plus two other, Portugal and Luxembourg, following composite indicators on research and innovation excellence. Now, the requirement, especially for teaming, one of the requirements for phase 1 is that the teaming is aimed at building centers of excellence, and as such, the center of excellence has to have they have to develop a clear vision for the future and also how it will be sustainable, etc. And one of the requirements, etc., is that this is in the field of the one of the priorities of the smart specialization. So inevitably, being these countries as well those that benefit most of the structural funds, and given this requirement of links with the smart specialization, hopefully the idea is that once the project is starting, there is not only Horizon 2020 money into that, but there is also structural funds adding some complementary money, infrastructure, etc., that are necessary for the full development of the centers of excellence. So in this case, there is kind of a, let's say, parallel synergy, let's say, where the two funds together contribute to the success of the centers of excellence. For ERA-chairs and twinning, this is not a specific requirement. We said, okay, it is welcome, recommended, but so this in this way we can consider this as part of the program that is a bit enabling synergies. Of course, there are also other actions that are not specifically targeting synergies but can help in the promotion. For instance, we have some projects that are, of course, selected based on excellence, but in the course of the project they are invited to start getting in contact eventually with managing authority, thinking about the exploitation of their results. So these are all measures, a bit softer, that can be used as well for synergies.
More a comment. I was in the committee proposing the synergies 5 years ago, so it's interesting to see how it has developed. One thing that is a problem is that you were underlining that you don't want to have overlap between Horizon 2020 and the structural funds. On one side, this is wise, but on the other side, this impedes, for example, the sustainability of if you build infrastructures, for example, the sustainability of the research infrastructures in the longer term, because Horizon 2020 is not yet ready to take over or partly take over because the excellence is not yet there because it's just built. ASIF funding forbids to have anything to do with operation. So at this point, you have really a clash between two different approaches. And I think that there should be something more done in trying to allow the continuity of projects instead of having gaps between projects.
Well, to me, what you are describing is exactly to try to have them complementary, yeah? So the two ones, and then, but the complementarity that goes very close to each other. So this is all the work that we are doing exactly to help in the aligning, and yeah, exactly. So yeah. So the complementarity happens when the two things are really one besides the other, and sometimes we have to work to avoid these gaps. Yeah, fully agree, and this is all the effort that we are trying to do.
I am Juan Perez from Tecnalia. One question to Rafael. In your presentation, you mentioned the internationalization of the research strategy. Could you develop a little bit more the idea?
Well, yes, because usually when you see the development of the, let's say, operational program in the structural funds up to now, even if many of them support the internationalization, I mean, the small companies, they don't have the means, not the content, not the network, just to identify that in some other regions of Europe, there is a similar problem and they could collaborate. So institutions like CSIC or even Tecnalia, because I know your experience, I mean, can be very useful, for instance, to connect. I will put you an example. I mean, the olive oil production, refining, taking this commodity as a basis for the Mediterranean food and whatsoever. Well, the very fact is that I observed this particular case, and I saw that the collaboration of companies from Greece, Italy, South of France, Portugal, and Spain, Malta, Cyprus, I mean, the producer, was very weak, almost non-existent, while the market was growing and our Italian friends were, for instance, buying olive oil everywhere and exporting with the seal of European Union production olive oil to the United States, while the Greeks and the Spaniards were not open this market. Even to produce new products, they need to collaborate, at least to identify that these opportunities exist, using the result of research from the institution in these countries and their capacity to commercialize and to produce new products. This is, for instance, an example. And this is where the networking between research institutions like the Greek, Italian, and Spanish about a common problem of olive oil's production or transforming or making new products could be very useful to inform the economic network about that. This was more or less an example of what I mean.
Good morning, this is Jorge Molina from Campus Iberus. Following on the question from our colleague from Tecnalia, I would like to raise another question, is how could I internationalize RIS3? I will give you an example. We're a campus of 4 universities from 4 different regions in Spain. So one of our aims, I mean, we develop activities within concrete knowledge and innovation domains according to first, capacities of the 4 universities, and second, RIS3 of the 4 regions involved, which are Aragon, Navarra, La Rioja, and part of Catalonia. So one of the aims is to put in value all the research and innovation results that we're developing as individual universities and as a whole. So how could you see synergies of ERD funding from 4 different regions from the same member state? I mean, I'm thinking, for instance, of a transnational RIS3 between Galicia and Portugal, right? But how do you see, do you think it's possible to combine ERD funding from 4 neighboring regions within one member state? So do you have some examples at your level, not only those related to research infrastructures? Do you have some examples of that, or how do you see that? Thank you.
Well, I will pass the question to Magda, because I think that this possibility exists. Unfortunately, as you know, in Spain, the implementation of the operational program has started very late. But if some regions have the same problem, certainly they can federate the effort. They can make joint calls, they can make mobility, create a common infrastructure, and so on, once they identify the common problem. And I think the Iberus Campus is a very good example where the collaboration between the academic institution is possible, feasible, and this is an asset, just to identify a common problem to the region concerned, and then use the potential of Campus Iberus to cope with it. But the first thing is that the authorities, as they have to identify some areas, the niche where they should specialize it. In your particular case, I think there are these niches in several fields. I know a few, but maybe you can complement this thing, because I think this is feasible, but maybe you can enlarge the description of this.
Well, I'm not a DG region person, but okay, I know, for instance, what I mentioned before, the idea of to spend the money eventually in other regions, your own money from one region also spending to another one is through Article 70 and then it has to be foreseen in the operational program. So in this case, let's imagine that for one region this is a very important project, so they can decide to spend up to 15% of the allocation of the money to their own region into other regions. So this is one way. The other possibility would be that each of the regions where this project is located decide to fund part of their own part of the project, and in this case the 4 universities could be eventually funded in this way. So there are I don't know other rules from ERDF, but this as well, this is already one possibility. We know as well that there must be a possibility, because for instance also for the ESFRI and for this the ELI that I was mentioning before, there were different countries even concerned. For instance, we have a Czech Republic, Hungary, and Romania, and in this case they use structural funds in order to fund this infrastructure, and then Horizon 2020 is combining, or FP7 at that time, with other funding.
Well, I represent ELI actually. And in fact, we have been building ELI with money from 3 different countries. What is surprising, however, is that there does not seem to be any incentive to have money from different countries put together in one project, in one single project between these countries. I don't know what is the direction of the mic. This is one thing. The other thing that strikes is the fragmentation of projects that are that can cover different countries. For example, if you look at the Interreg project, does not speak with any other project. I mean, not with Horizon 2020, not with the ESIF projects of the countries. So there is still a lot of fragmentation that should be overcome.
One example now, for instance, speaking about Interreg, they seems, for instance, to be interested to pick up some projects that are SMEs facilitated project by clusters. So there is that's why they asked as well to extend the seal of excellence to them, because they could be interested in this type of activities. So this Interreg could be one. It is one possibility. And then we have the thematic smart specialization platform that are emerging now, that normally have the idea to put together regions that have the same priorities in smart specialization, and in a way that they can collaborate and then include industry, etc., and create this value chain of projects. So this is another possibility to put together different regions that have the same priority, and then probably they have a way as well to combine the funding.
Thank you. We are going to stop now for a coffee break. If you have more questions for speakers, for Rafael or Magda, I hope they will stay for a coffee at least. And please be here at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much.